The NBA season was in full swing. Then came March 11th, right before the Utah Jazz and Oklahoma City Thunder were about to tip off. Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz tested positive. Then their game got delayed and eventually canceled. So have the games since then. Now, about 4 months later, the NBA season is getting ready to restart in Orlando at Disney World, also known as the bubble. But is this a good idea? Will they get to the finals? Will the next season be able to happen? Find out on the Basketball Daily. This is the Basketball Daily, and I'm Earl. On today's show, we will be talking about how COVID-19 affected the NBA. We will speak to a number of experts about this topic. Ryan Ruocco, a sportscaster for Yes and ESPN. Richard Jefferson, a former NBA player and ESPN analyst. And finally, Matt Goldsmith, the head men's basketball coach for the College of New Jersey. First up, we will talk to Ryan Ruocco and Richard Jefferson. Some players still testing positive for COVID-19. Do you think the NBA season should continue?
Earl, that is a very, very good question. I think it should continue. That there has been players tested positive over the course of these past few weeks leading up to them going to the bubble because players were quarantined. But the NBA just came out, I believe, yesterday, and they say that inside the bubble, every single person tested negative, right? So that means that all of the precautionary measures that they are taking have got them to a spot of negative test. Now, will it stay negative forever? No one knows. But what they do know is all of the precautionary things that they did in the weeks and even the months preparing for this for the bubble has led them to negative tests. And players that tested positive before they got on the plane had to stay home and quarantine. And in order to get into the bubble per se and to be able to socialize, you have to quarantine for 2 straight days. So I think they're doing all the necessary steps, especially now that they've shown that there are 0 positive tests in the bubble, and their goal is to keep it that way.
And one other thing I'll just add to that answer from Richard, Earl, is, I think if they had seen sort of a light at the end of the tunnel where you knew, this virus is going to be totally eradicated if we just wait till X date, then maybe you could have waited till you get to 0 cases before you restart. But as we've all seen, especially in varying regions of the country, you're going to eventually do some things, right? You're going to have mitigation tactics like Richard was just talking about, but we're not going to be able to just wait entirely until the virus is gone because we don't know exactly what that timeline is. So I think the NBA did the best job possible of saying hey, we can't just shut the league down indefinitely. How can we do this as safely as possible?
If the NBA season does continue, do you think the NBA players will continue to follow the rules since some of them have been sneaking out of the bubble?
This is a great question for Richard.
That's a great. Well, Earl. So yes, that is a very, very good question, Earl. I can see that you've done their homework. So players, the bubble is not an actual bubble. They have basically a campus. So they have a campus, and on that campus there are lines that you're not supposed to cross. And so a player went across that line to get some food, to get food, and so they've set up like the anonymous hotline to make sure that, because it's, as much as people want to joke and say that this is about players are telling on other players, ultimately what they're doing is they're protecting the safety of all of the people that are there and have committed to being there. So I don't think players are sneaking out of the bubble per se. there have been players that have left, but Rashawn Holmes, the player from the Sacramento Kings, once he was caught going past that line on the campus to grab some food, he was then forced to quarantine for 10 days alone in his room. So I think, just like anything, there's cautionary tales. And I think players saw what happened and they don't want to do it. And I think this was an accidental moment. But players aren't like sneaking out to go hang out with friends or to go hang out with family. It was just like a campus line that was overstepped.
All right.
Okay.
Good questions, Earl.
Great questions, Earl.
Thanks.
Those were some good answers and opinions from those two. I can't wait to have them on the show again once the season starts. Next up, we have Matt Goldsmith giving us the coach perspective.
With players testing positive for COVID-19, do you think it's a smart idea to continue the NBA season?
Wow, right to it, Earl. That's a great question. I love it. That's selfishly, as a basketball fan and coach, I would love for them to continue because I want to watch and see them play. I see both sides of the coin when I view it. I think that they're taking all the precautions necessary, creating the bubble down there in Orlando and testing as much as they do. So if they can, weed out the current virus cases and the people who are sick and get them out of there before they infect anyone else, I think they should go ahead and play. I also understand the players who voluntarily chose not to go. I totally get that too. I think some people, value different things and maybe they don't want to put their career ahead of, the health and safety of their family, or maybe they live around, their grandparents or parents or something like that. So I think it's totally acceptable for them to say, I don't feel comfortable doing it and stepping away. But I do think the NBA and the resources they have, they're taking, they're doing what they need to do and using the precautions necessary that I think they should be able to move forward with the season.
If the NBA season was to continue, do you think it would be canceled midway?
Do I think it will be canceled?
Yes, if it starts again.
That's a great question. Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. They are in Orlando and Florida hasn't been great as of late. And that's what they did in the beginning. It was mid-season. It was right before a game. If you remember that first night where the whole NBA got canceled, they were about to tip off and the athletic trainer ran out onto the floor and said, no, we can't play. So I think that although they put all these resources in and they've spent all this money to prepare to be back into full play, I do think that the NBA is smart enough to cancel and postpone the season if it gets to that level. I don't think that, I think there are some leagues out there that are a little less forward thinking and would just move forward no matter what. But I think the NBA is one of those leagues that looks after their players first and foremost. And so if it does get to a point where they need to, I think they'd be willing to postpone the season again.
A very special thank you to Matt for doing that interview. Since my interviews, we have found out that, as reported by ESPN, current LA Clipper Lou Williams, who was excused from the bubble, was not where the NBA officials thought he was. And he was seen not social distancing and without a mask. The question is, will the Clippers guard be able to come back and play? This is just one example of why I think the NBA season should not come back. I believe that it's not safe for NBA to continue its season. Though none of the players have tested positive in the bubble, that does not mean anyone won't catch it and spread it. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, was quoted as saying, even if you get infected without any symptoms, it is likely you are going to infect someone else. This means potentially someone re-entering the bubble could not show symptoms and bring the virus back. Ultimately, time will tell if restarting the NBA season, not canceling it, was the right decision. As a basketball fan, I'm glad basketball is back. As a human being, I hope everyone stays safe. This is Earl Hart for the Basketball Daily, and I will see you tomorrow.